Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nguyệt Anh from the International Finance Corporation, IFC. Thank you for joining our first webinar organized by the Vietnam Institute of Directors, VIOD, in collaboration with IFC. While the situation is getting better in Vietnam in the last 10 days, social distancing is still being encouraged. Therefore, webinar is the most suitable platform for now for our VIOD to bring you a high-level update on the situation of COVID-19 and its impact to the Vietnam economy. And especially during this event, we would like to share with you Thailand's experience in addressing corporate governance implication as a drive force for the nation during the crisis, and also to plan forward. With us today, we have two speakers, Mr. Lê Anh Thuấn from Dragon Capital Vietnam and Dr. Bandit Najitawan who is the chairman of the Public Policy and Good Governance Foundation of Thailand. I will introduce about them later before their presentation. To ensure the smooth running of this session, we have some rules to share with you now. First, the microphones of all the participants will be muted by the host to minimize the disruption to the audio quality. In addition, we would like you to on the speaker, keep your phone quiet, please, or turn up to the silent mode. The question and answer segment will be managed to the chat window. You are highly encouraged to send the question to all panelists. We'll have a Q&A coordinator to pass your question to Madam Thanh, who will be the moderator of the discussion section later on. Due to the time limit, if you have any questions that are not addressed during this webinar, we'll make sure to get back to you via emails and probably other webinar on your interested topics. To begin our webinar, let me introduce Mr. Dominic Scriven, OBE, who is the Vice Chairperson of VIDs, to give the opening remark. Mr. Dominic, over to you. Please turn on your camera. Thank you.
And allow me to add to Nguyệt Anh's very graceful words of welcome to you all. It is indeed, as Nguyệt Anh said, our first webinar. I think we're all in very strange and uncharted territory, and I suspect that we may have many opportunities to meet over a webinar. My job is very briefly to welcome you all and to point out that this is the month where we mark our second anniversary in VIOD. So who would have guessed 2 years ago what sort of times we would be launching our institute into? And indeed, we've all been surprised. So I, in addition to my VIOD role, also am a businessman with Dragon Capital. And I guess that I share with many of you the great shock and surprise of the last 3 or 4 months. So what we'd like to do is to stimulate a discussion of how to deal with these great crises, such as the one we've just been delivered. So the first reaction we have is one of crisis management. Of course, all of us in our businesses, we have preparations for crisis management. I don't suppose any of us would have been prepared for a pandemic, but we might perhaps have prepared for data disruption or geopolitical events. Then, of course, crisis management means business continuity. It means, can we still function? It means safety for our staff, safety for our stakeholders. And then it means turning our minds to some of the medium-term tasks, strategy, how our business environment has changed. These are the sort of things that we'd like to be discussing, and I'm delighted today that we're going to be joined by Dr. Bandid, as Nguyen Anh said. In addition to our chair, Madam Tan, hosting a Q&A at the end, we also hope that you'll join us in celebrating a significant signing with IFC. With that, perhaps it's time for me to return the mic to Nguyen Anh to hear Dr. Tuan of Dragon, who's going to be sharing some views about COVID and the environment in which we find ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominic, for the opening remark, which is very delightful to hear you. I would like to introduce now Mr. Lê Anh Thuấn. Is a very famous speaker. Mr. Thuấn is the Deputy CIO, Head of Research of Dragon Capital. He will present today for us an overview of COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the Vietnam economy and looking on how it impacts our capital market and how companies should, be updated with the new situation. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Thuấn.
Thank you, thank you, VIOD, for inviting me to share what Dragon Capital thinking about COVID-19 on global and on local market. So first, I think COVID-19 is a global problem. So it's important to see and to take a view on how it may happen globally, and then we link it back to the Vietnam market, the Vietnam economy. So without any delay, allow me to talk about COVID-19. So if you look at the COVID-19 on global, so the lockdown has been basically very widespread globally, and that create a peak in the new cases in most of the country already. But the problem for that is it's create a peak, but the slowing in terms of new cases daily is very slow. So what do I mean by that? So the key important right now for most of the economies and the policymaker is how the country are going to open the economy. So if the problem for economies is they don't have a clear vision or the study case to really look at it and study. First, the only study you have is from Wuhan, which is it took them about, after the lockdown, it took them about 14 days to the peak and about 45 days to contain and then partially reopen the economy, and around 75 days to fully reopen the economy. So basically, based on this timeline and based on the new cases we study in global scale, we believe like Italy, France, Spain, and Germany, like we have the economy reopen slowly, probably starting the first and second week of May. The UK is a bit later, probably end of May. US could be similar. So, but the question is, what do we mean by open? Here's a case study at Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, in February, there's only a few cases reported, infected reported. The government easing the social distance and the worker come back to work. What happened is 2 weeks later, the resurgence of the new cases, so the government had to shut it down one again. What do we mean by reopen? What do we mean by reopen is some sector will reopen, but the whole economy is not reopened at a full scale. We believe some sort of social distance still apply across different countries. We believe mass testing, contact tracing to slow the spread, like most of like what Korea has done, will be applied globally. We believe what inter-regional travel won't be possible until probably early next year or later this year. The resurgence we have of the virus, but it could be dealt with a much better experience. So that's what we believe about reopen mean. In terms of the curves and the vaccine I think our best scenario is in Q3. There's something coming out in terms of antiviral. The base case scenario for the vaccine, we don't happen until the first half of 2021, or even a massive vaccine vaccinate globally may not happen until maybe Q3 2021. About the Vietnam situation, Vietnam is one of the probably one of the best in terms of managing the COVID-19. And the effort right now being recognized by not only local people, but also by international newspaper. So far, we have only 268 cases. Active cases, which is the people still infected, is only 40 cases. Recover is almost like, 80% already. Key one is the transmitted COVID-19, mostly imported. 2/3 of Vietnam infected cases are from imported. Local is only 106 cases. So Vietnam has done a fantastic job in terms of control of COVID. Okay, for the conclusion on what conclusion globally, we think Western countries can start reopening, and that's what they do right now from around now to end of May. But the reopen will be very slow. We believe Vietnam, by the way, this presentation we did about 2-3 weeks ago. I think the content has not changed. We believe Vietnam will control the disease by the end of April because of they did good. Believe the virus will not completely completely gone away. I don't think that's going to happen. We believe the first few months we will still globally on some social distancing measure with the massive testing ability. Don't expect any treatment coming out too early. I would say best case scenario Q3, the vaccine could be in 2021. And to complete resume normal life, we don't think it's happening in 2020. It will be 2021. Okay, so it's important to look at how the COVID-19 impacting global economy. As Vietnam has been highly correlated or integrated globally. So first, you look at the S&P 500 in the US. The stock market 34% from the peak in February, all the way, despite the Fed has been aggressively intervene the market, buy everything in the market. And then you have the disaster relief package coming out, $2.3 billion. That create the first bottom of the market. Okay, I think it's important to look and compare what is the difference in terms of the 2008 crisis and now. We did look at 2013 now and 2008. So what is in 2008? Actually quite simple. First, the Fed need to stabilize the banking system. They need to ensure the credit flow, and the government came in and start and do a stimulus and start the engine. So that's what they did. That's exactly what the US did. Now it's a bit more complicated. The complication coming from first, you need to ensure the stability of the financial system. I think the Fed has done a fantastic job. Then they need to have a rescue bill to support Americans during the outbreak. I think that's a $2.3 billion package is doing. But the big difference now is the government doesn't see a clear path to really reopen the whole economy. So when they see the clear path of that, they can do stimulus and restart the engine. So actually, a problem right now compared to 2008 is a bit more painful in that way. But the good thing is the Fed and the government react quicker and faster compared to 2008. Okay, if you look at the stock market, don't get surprised. The market has been bottoming out and rallied 25% in the US already. But don't get surprised if there's another leg down, because that's what happened in most of the crises. So this is, if it happens, feel it as normal. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the economy. We created the system of indicator, high frequency indicator to follow the US market. First, we look at the jobless claim, and then we look at the Fed weekly economic index. This is very fantastic index. I will tell you in a second. And then we put a lot of effort to look at the high yield spread, the mortgage-backed security spread, and the consumer asset-backed security. Because this is important. This is key to determine whether we are going to have the debt crisis or not. The initial, this is record high, guys. This is 10 times bigger than 2008. Okay, so if you look at the US, you break down to the sector, there is around 31 million people are highly exposed to the sector which are likely to lay off people. It's about 20%. So far, we have 26 million people unemployed already in the US. We expect it can go up to about 35 to 40 million people, or equal 20 to 25% of unemployment rate in the US. That's a record high. We believe it's a very front-loaded. I think we have correct on this one, which is we believe in May, the daily initial jobless claim will be slowing down. And when the economy partially reopen, that could be a bit better. In terms of the weekly economic indicator by the Fed, 2008 is only minus 3%, and now it's minus 11%. We expect this ratio to be minus about 20-25% in the next 1 to 2 more months. But we also believe it could be bottoming out in May. Okay, here's important thing for the great market for business, which is how the banking sector look like. You look at the banking sector in the US, you look at T1 capital, actually is better than 2008 level, okay? Which is the bank are in a better position to deal with the crisis than 10, 12 years ago. Equity rate S&P 500 actually also way better than the periods which is happened for the 2008. Okay, so whether the package in the US is good enough to rescue the economy, the answer very simple: no. Because you look at the SME companies, there's about 61 million people employed by SME in the US, small medium enterprise, which is out of 160 million people. And if you look at the payroll, this is around $230 billion per month, and the package is only $360 billion. That's clearly not enough. That's only good for 1 to 1.5 months only. So we believe the new package will come out more. Okay, the package 2, package 3 for the US will come out. Okay, then you look at the high yield spread, which is this high yield spread going to be a lot higher. Then the debt market is in trouble, and the debt market in trouble is not nice. The stock market can correct, but the debt market, if it is in trouble, it creates a big crisis. So good thing is at this level right now, we are still way lower than what it was back in 2008. The reason may be because the Fed has been intervening the market very heavily. Okay, so look where the people talking about the default in household market. So what we did is we did a test in Dragon. We look at the component of employees across different wage salary package. 26% of employees make $30,000 per month in the US. Given this, we can calculate the monthly income, and then you can calculate the care and unemployment benefit. Basically, the people at the top, at the bottom of the salary ladder, they be able to break even with this package, meaning the risk to default on credit card, on whatever, is actually remain still low compared to people imagine. In terms of mortgage-backed security, which is property market in the US, and asset-backed security, you look at during the great financial crisis, is 1.8% spread, and now it's like right now it's very low compared to during the financial crisis. So it's a problem. It's not really a big problem yet. Okay, so we should not lose sleep over it. Okay, so allow me to go to basically recap it. Virus globally, we believe is slowing down, but actually compared to our base case scenario, it's slowing down, but it dragged a bit longer than people anticipated. Unemployment in Europe probably could be peak in April and early May. Economic activities is terrible, but very likely it could be bottoming out in May. On the credit market, the default actually is not as bad as people. That's the conclusion from economics. Okay, so let me translate and bring it back to Vietnam. Vietnam, first remember, before the COVID-19, Vietnam, we have quite a solid macro set of indicators. We have an excellent FDI, we have a growing export market, we have current account have been surplus. Forex reserve has been as good as ever. The stability of the domestic currency has been great compared to other currency. The debt actually, to most people surprise, is not high. Okay, so that's what we enter before we go to the COVID-19. I don't need to talk about COVID-19 in Vietnam. Move directly to how the COVID-19 impact the Vietnam economy and different sector. The first sector, the most obvious one is service sector, which 42% of GDP. And the most problematic sector is the hospitality, tourist sector. And this one, on the tourists, normally we have 1.5 to 2 million people per month, and now we're headed to zero. Okay, and this zero will stay for a while. It's not going to go up anytime soon. Look at the hotel one. We did great before the COVID. 70% is good ratio. Now it's like 95%, 9.5% about a month ago. Now should be zero. Okay. You look at the passenger transportation in this indicator for the economic activities in Vietnam. In fact, actually it's negative about 4%. I believe this negative will be way bigger in a. However, service sector is not about hospitality. It's also about retail, banking, insurance, and we have a big consumption in the rural area. And the rural area seem to be less impacted by COVID-19. So that's explain why in February, in March, the retail side doesn't go down too much. Let me take a positive on this one. And I can give you some story on this. 2015, Vietnam and China, we had some conflict in the East Sea. We burned some Chinese factories, and the Chinese tourists doesn't stop coming to Vietnam. Back then, people were a bit worried about the flow of Chinese tourists. What happened is a year later, to surprise everyone, it went up 50%, 60%. Currently, people feel service sector is terrible because of everyone losing job and doesn't have money. I tell you one thing is the people who use service the most is not the people who make 10 million dong per month. That's the people who make 25 to 30 million dong per month. That's the people, the segmentation use a lot of service. Okay, so that explains why if you check around the country right now, most of the resort close to Ho Chi Minh City without flying, it's tough to book a room right now for the next 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, so to the manufacturing sector. On the manufacturing sector, what you have here is in February, I was very worried. The reason I was worried is because Vietnam relied a lot on China and Korea because on input material. What happened is power consumption going down significantly in February. 1 month after that, the Lunar New Year. The reason because we don't have input material. But the first week of March, the power consumption picked up strongly. Okay, so meaning like, okay, when China and Korea open, Vietnam we good. But here's the problem. Problem in US and Europe shutting down. And we have like about 40% export to those two countries. Okay. Only that, we also export to Southeast Asia and a lot too. So how it might impact the export and import market in Vietnam? So what we don't know. What we did is we call people on survey. On the textile sector, which is supposed to be very vulnerable to COVID-19, we expect 20 to 30% down on order canceling and less than 10% on ODM. You look at the year and export numbers still good. Export to grow 4%, but this is year-to-date number. If you look at half of the month only in April, import down 20%, export down 36% in half month of April. But don't be scared by this number. But this number on half a month only. My experience is to get the right trend, you need to wait for at least 1 to 2 months. Okay. But the April is probably the worst month in terms of production and international trade. So if that is export down 36%, you should not expect export down 50% by May or April. In the financial market, Vietnam faced the biggest equity outflow ever after COVID. We have about $700 million roughly outflow after COVID compared to different period before. However, the interbank market still very solid. The currency, surprise to everyone, is still very small compared to other currency. Because of Vietnam, actually, the macro indicators are quite good. But the key thing as a market is about how our companies are dealing with COVID. Are we able to survive or not? So what we look at is we look at top 100 listed companies in Vietnam. The debt equity ratio lower than ever. The cash flow actually positive, so that's good. Meaning like and they also buy back their own share. So basically, the big companies on average are able to survive this COVID very well. But the problem is coming from the SME, small medium enterprise. The small medium enterprise, we don't have data. So what we did is we take 1,500 companies in the market with the market cap less than $40 million as a proxy. So what we look at is the debt equity ratio is still higher than the big company, and the cash available is still okay, but on average they can survive 9 months. However, there is about 25% of companies are in great danger. Okay, in the next 1 to 2 more months. The conclusion from these two slides, I would say, is the bigger company will benefit from this COVID-19 compared to the smaller because the survival ability is better. So we should expect market consolidation and market share divided differently. In terms of the package coming from the monetary policy and fiscal policy, in terms of central bank, they cut rate about 50 bips. The best thing they did is not about actually they allow bank to restructure the loan, which have problem. Basically, this is similar to what the Fed did in the US, but I would expect the central bank to be a bit more aggressive. In terms of fiscal policy, I think the government has done a job. $2.7 billion, 1% of GDP, basically give money away. The package of $8 billion still discussing right now and not yet to be approved. But the biggest, the most promising thing in the next few years is not the rescue package, but rather the infrastructure investment package. In the last 3 years, infrastructure investment has not been that popular, and now it's become very popular. However, the problem for Vietnam is the mechanic to distribute this money is tough. In terms of Vietnam fiscal deficit is low, public debt is low. I think we have a great room to do it, no problem. In terms of GDP, our base case scenario, which is we did about a month and a half ago, our base case scenario is still about 4.9% GDP growth. Our worst case scenario is about 2.8, and I don't think our best case scenario will happen given what COVID is developing globally. So I conclude my presentation, and the conclusion is in Vietnam, in terms of growth, we still want the best but in emerging market. Over to you, Chị Nguyệt Anh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thuận, for very useful information sharing with us. I think that we'll continue to invite Dr. Thuận to come to share with us in a future event on webinar with VIOD. And now I would like to introduce to the audience Dr. Bandit Nizatawan. He is currently the chairman of the Public Policy and Good Governance Foundation. He is the former president of the Thai Institute of Directors, also former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Thailand. Dr. Bandit is a famous corporate governance expert, and he has a lot of experience with working on transforming corporate governance of Thailand during and after the financial crisis before. So he will be sharing with us Thailand's experience on how corporate governance can help companies to overcome crisis. Dr. Bandit, over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation. Let me begin first by saying a few congratulations, especially the first one to the VIOD for coming into being. And I'm sure that you will be the key institution for promoting better governance in the private sector in Vietnam. And then second is my congratulations to your first VIOD IFC webinar, okay, that we are having today. And lastly, okay, let me congratulate Vietnam for successfully reducing the spread of the COVID virus. And I heard that you soon be moving into easing the lockdown, which means the resumption of economic activities. I think we are indeed living in a very extraordinary time. As Dr. Tuan has noted, the economic impact of the crisis has been large. Can you put on the PowerPoint number 4? Yep. And that there'll be important implication for businesses. And given the limitation of time, I would like to focus my remark this afternoon to just 3 points. First is how I see the crisis evolving. And second is how companies in Thailand have responded to it. And the last one is, of course, the role of corporate governance to help companies overcome the crisis. And now, next, please. I think I'll compare with the previous crisis, notably the Asian financial crisis of 1997 and the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. I think this crisis is totally different. It is different because it is a twin crisis of a health pandemic and also an economic crisis with a lot of uncertainty regarding how the crisis would evolve. But more importantly, the policies to address the pandemic through containment measures also have large economic impact and worsening, and it can worsen the economic crisis. And also the fact that it is a global crisis that affects most countries in the world today. This sort of thing make it very difficult for an open economy, like Thailand and maybe Vietnam, to recover, because we rely on the market of export and also tourism as our key economic driver. So I think again this background, the policy responses in most countries have been on 3 things. First one is the priority to save lives of the infected and also the frontline doctor and nurses, and then to limit the spread of the virus through containment, and then to deal with the economic consequences of the containment measures decisively with direct support to those affected, and also to support companies and financial markets so that the economic capacities can be restored back quite quickly as soon as the pandemic passes. And so I think reflecting this, as Dr. Chun mentioned, we have seen rescue packages of countries that ranges from 5% to 10% of GDP or more to protect the economy from the impact, and also to prepare the economy for the recovery. I think the underlying assumption of this approach is that the crisis is something that's going to be quite transitory. I mean, the shock going to be quite transitory, and that it may last maybe up to 6 months or more. So it is important to try to help the economy to pass through this critical period where the virus is still spreading, and then to be able to recover quickly when the pandemic passes. Now, for companies, I think in the case of Thailand and in most countries, the crisis is both the supply side and the demand side crisis. Next one, please. Initially, I think it began as a supply side crisis with the COVID-19 disrupted the ability to produce through, people get sick and supply chain disruption, through logistic constraints and volatile prices. But then we have, after that we have the demand side collapse with falling export, falling domestic demands, and consumer not spending, as well as the impact of government regulations that require people to stay home and so on. So this is the collapse on the demand side that follow. And with falling demand and declines in production, companies faces the problems of cash flows and also liquidity. And in addition, for companies that have long contract with their consumers or suppliers, the disruption would also mean failures to meet contractual obligation, as goods and services could not be delivered as agreed. So I think these are the four key areas of impact that have led the companies, to find measures to respond to it. And the responses in the case of Thailand, I think it's both coming from the short term, that is crisis management, and also in order to ensure business continuity, and also a longer term response, which is about rethinking and repositioning business to ensure that the business continue to be viable in the post COVID-19 world. But I think one key part to note in the context of Thailand is that because the impact is economy-wide, it also affects everybody in the community, and it has been quite large and devastating. So the company response to the crisis, therefore, will need to go beyond its own business. The response will need to take into account also the impacts of its action on the stakeholders and also on the economy at large. That means, to become a socially responsible company at the time of crisis and hardship that the country and the people is going through. So the mindset here is that, when you respond, it's just not you give importance not just for your own company, but you have to look beyond that into the implication of your action for the stakeholders, and also what you can do as a member of the community to help the country as a whole. Next, please. So I think along this line, we have observed that companies in Thailand have been responding by the crisis in 3 or 4 main ways. I think first is making adjustment, like cost cutting, to keep employment and also to maintain business continuity. All of them, I think, give importance to monitoring and adhering to the government policy and instruction that come as a response to fighting the crisis. And most of them pay attention to the issues of possible liquidity and cash flows problems through conducting stress tests and also reprioritizing their investment, to mobilize cash and so on. One key action that we have seen also is communication, meaning regular communication to the stakeholders in order to reduce uncertainties and also to avoid unnecessary business disruption. This is very important, I think, especially for employees and suppliers and customers and also creditors. And also under the difficult business conditions, there are, of course, temptation to do bad things, to cut corners and to use unethical business practices just to stay alive or to continue business. And this is something that I've seen companies that emphasize this point. And because if everybody does it, then the whole business, in the country as a group, will not be able to survive. Okay. And lastly, what we have seen is that business do lots of donation to help public cause, and also some even use their spare capacities to reposition their production lines into producing things that are needed, in high demand to fight pandemics. So we see companies moving into producing like masks. If you're a garment export business, producing PPE for the doctors, and oil company moving into producing sanitation gels and all these things, and even try to have a hand on redesigning certain medical equipments. And in the hospitality industries, with empty hotels, we can see hotels being turned into places, for discharged patient from the hospital to recover, and also for quarantining. So this is an example of how the resources are being redeployed through the decision of businesses, to help fight the virus. So I think all this, all this was made possible because of the board of the companies and the management that work closely together at the time of crisis, with the board contributing new ideas, information, and advice to management to help ensure good decisions are being made with proper governance. So as a result, I think all these responses are guided by the company's better governance mindset, and reflected clearly, that their concern regarding the duty of care, the duties of obedience, and the duties of royalty, not just to the shareholders, but also to the stakeholders at large. I think this is clearly reflect a new focus that corporate governance is moving into, that is moving away from the shareholders centric corporate governance into a more stakeholders centric governance, and moving away from short-termism, short-term profit and result, and more towards longer-term sustainability. I think this sort of thing we will be seeing more and more in the region, as the years come. Now, lastly, just noted that many people. Next one, please. Next slide. Yes. Next one, please. I think many people have said that this crisis, for both country and business, it's like a true test of leadership, resilience, and also trust. I myself cannot agree more. I think company that can rise to the challenge of the current crisis will be those that exhibit these three qualities: leadership, resiliencies, and trust. Okay, and together with a sound balance sheet. So therefore, to be successful in the post-COVID world, I think company must aim to achieve three things. First, they must aim to achieve a business that is resilient, agile, and fit to the situation of the post-COVID world. Second, to achieve a business that gains trust of the public and the stakeholders. And the last one is to have the leadership that values change, innovation, and good corporate governance. My thinking is that this quality will help company to stand tall amidst so many uncertainties that we are facing, and would be able to overcome the challenges that may arise in the future. So this is the point that I like to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bandit, for the valuable experience sharing, which is very helpful for us, Vietnamese company, and also many other stakeholders to learn, especially during this difficult time. It's now time for the discussion section to address everyone's questions. Allow me to introduce Madame Ha Thu Thanh, VID's board chairperson, who will be the moderator of our discussion today. Over to you, Madame Thanh.
Thank you, Dr. Tuấn and Dr. Bandit for joining us and sharing with us. So we have time for some few comments and questions from participants. I understand. First thing, I understand that we have it's Trần Anh Đào from Jose. She joined us today. Jose is also one of very important partner for VIOD for last couple of years since we established. But and Mr. Chen Anh Dao also has a lot of experience involved with the market, stock market in Ho Chi Minh City. Ms. Dao, can you please share with us your views of the listed company the situation in Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange from the corporate governance side on the COVID-19 situation?
Good afternoon. I'm Dao from the stock exchange. Very interesting to involve in this webinar. And according to our statistics so far, we have 10 listed companies that have to delay their annual report due to the COVID-19. And so far, for the first quarter financial report, we still receive the report from our listed company. But the very first is most of the companies, they have their sales and their profits a little bit lower than last year, as well as the last quarter. I mean that the fourth quarter of last year, especially the companies in the services industry and in the real estate industry. For the banking industry, which is the most powerful industry in our stock exchange, we also see a light reduce on the sales as well as the profit. And we think that next quarter, maybe the profits and sales of our listed company will have more impacts than the first quarter, because for the first quarter we experienced the Tết holiday, the full Tết holidays, and a lot of our listed companies they have their most important quarter in the first quarter. So I think we think that maybe the impacts will be higher in the next quarter. However, to look forward to the end of the year, we believe that our economy will recover very quickly. Yeah, we hope so.
Thank you, Miss Dao. We have a question for Dr. Bendis. The questions that for Dr. Bendis with the what sharing with us, that's a very interesting. With a comment from you. So question is, how can we measure the interest of the stakeholders?
Measures in what sense?
Yes. So the question is, how can we measure the interest of the stakeholders?
Okay. I think the key issues here is to know who they are. Okay, which for a typical business, it might be about 10 different stakeholders that will be affected by the decision of the company at one time. You know, this ranges from internally, you have the board, management, the employees, and then you have the external stakeholders like customers, creditor, you know, the government, the regulators, the suppliers, and the community, and so on. So I think these are the typical 10 stakeholders that will be affected by the decision of the company. Now, I think one way to be able to gauge what would be required in terms of your own business, I think one method that has been regularly used is to have regular communication with the stakeholders, both in terms of passive communication and active communication. Passive means that, you know, it's a one-way communication. that you make sure that you becoming more transparent on your data, on your annual report, and so you have the facility, to be able to answer questions that your stakeholder might have. A more active approach is to actually try to go out and reach them, through your different facilities. We have seen in Thailand where they conducted a visit to your factory by the people in the community that the factory is located. Okay, so they know what the business is all about, and how the business is related to the employment and to the well-being of the community. Internally at headquarters, you can organize different meetings. You can have your analyst meeting where you can explain to the investors what's happening, and then you can set up, a different platform where those stakeholders who are interested in the company can use it as a way to contact the companies. So I think there are ways in which you can use both passive and then active to be able to judge how are you performing vis-a-vis the expectation of the stakeholders. And this is, I think, especially important for companies that uses a lot of local resources, those in the productions of raw materials, those that uses raw materials that come from the locals, that people might feel that you need to explain more why you're doing all this sort of thing. So I think there are ways that the company can reach out and then try to put forward the understanding of what they are doing, and that they get they get the trust of the stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Bendis. We have another question for you too. So from the presentation, we understand that economic will recover. The recover will be have a W shape, which means that very high and certain ahead. So this will hold the companies from the making investment as a company risk active versus after the crisis. So if the company ever making investment, so they respect to sponsor the investment by stock rather than by loan during the crisis. This is like a twin problem, hard to refund from stock the market. So so how corporate governance could help company overcome with these twin problems?
I think the people are expecting that this recovery from the crisis will be a long one, okay? Because from experience of other countries, you can have the lockdown, and you can have the reopen, as Dr. Tuan was saying, and then if that reopen led to another round of virus resurgence, then you might need to come back to the lockdown again, as happened in Singapore and also in Japan. So so as long as we still don't have the medicine to cure it, we still don't have the vaccine to protect ourselves against it, and we do not have the so-called the herd immunity in the country at the level that we can protect ourselves, then any reopening could be dangerous. Okay, it would be a risk that might lead to another round of virus spreading. So along this line, then people see this reopening as a cycle of opening lockdown, okay, and until at the end, when things go back to normal, because the vaccine is developed or the medicine has been introduced. I think in the last presentation, Dr. Tuan was saying something like, the Q3 of next year. So at least, for one more year, we might be in this position of to do things carefully. But this will be for the whole market, right? So if you wanted to go to investment, in order to convince your creditor that you are ready for it, I think there is another dimension of the story in the context of risk management. What if this recovery doesn't come as fast as you expected in your plan? What would be your contingencies, plan to address it? So I think it will make the whole investment story much more complicated. But the banks would be willing to lend because they're looking for good customers at this time. So if you have a good story with a clear dimension that investment is needed now because it has a long gestation period before it can come over, before it can be used, and this period of gestation require that we do it now. But if things do not turn out to be as we expected, then you have the contingency plan to try to minimize the financial risk that can happen. So I think it makes the whole story become more complicated, but it could be handled. And the good corporate governance about all these things is that it's about risk management, that you stick to the duty of care, do things carefully and become open, to your stakeholders about what you see to be the possibilities of problem coming forward, and then try to minimize it, through measures that you think are required.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bandit. So we also have Professor Philip who joining us from Middle East. I would like to have the very quick share of views on how corporate governance can have the Vietnamese company overcome with the crisis. Professor Philip?
Now, I think it's, so first, I think it's a good opportunity to keep, I think, the link with our own members. I think this is important for us. I think it's, at the start, Dominic mentioned that we are still a very young organization. And at the moment, people are busy with other things. And so they may not be thinking about corporate governance. They may just be thinking about survival. And so the question would be for us, for VIOD, how to be relevant when people are talking about survival. So I would like to offer a quick segue to what Dr. Bandit said about risk management. I think we can take this opportunity of COVID-19 to think about what would be the most relevant classes that would need to have, let's say, June, July, September, I don't know exactly when, but when the situation starts to normalize, when people say, okay, now we've survived, thank you. How do we make sure we can survive another time? And this is where I think we can have a role to play. So I think I'm trying to see the opportunity for us medium term, okay? Because at the moment, the most pressing opportunity is just to be still alive in 30 or 60 days for many organizations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have few questions for Dr. Tuấn and few questions for Dr. Bandit, but due to the limited time, so it's really thank you you all for our distinguished panelists for the dedicated to time to join with our first webinar today. We're gonna send the question to you separately offline through by email to get more sharing the thoughts later. Thank you all for your participation. We look forward to receiving the continued support and collaboration in the coming times. Then wish all of us can stay healthy, stronger, and together we can overcome with a very difficult time for now. Let me please allow me to close the Q&A section, and we're gonna follow up with our question later on by email. Thank you. Back to Nguyệt Anh.
To our speakers and all attendees. Now we move our session to the most important event to sign the cooperation agreement between IFC and VIOD. Now we would like to welcome Mr. Kai Kjellhofer, IFC Country Manager for Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and Madam Ha Thu Thanh, chairpersons of VID to kick off the signing ceremony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kai and IFC team. Thank you, IFC, for sending very nice flower to us on the occasion of second birthday of VIOD. With joining team today with me, I have Mr. Nguyễn Viết Thịnh. He's here as the CEO of VIOD here. And again, we really thankful the IFC for very strong support VIOD over the past 2 years with to enhance the board effectiveness and improve the very good corporate governance practice in Vietnam. So our first webinar today with IFC support that dedicate that VIOD facilitator as also good win with networking with the members. We just confirm our commitment or work together to support the markets over the challenging time like this. Thank you, Mr. Choi and IFC team again.
I'm pleased to invite Mr. Kai Kampo to have some speech.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Madam Atutan, distinguished guests and key speakers, participating members and members of the network of the Vietnam directors. I'm Kyle Kapler. I'm the IFC country manager for Vietnam, Cambodia, and gentlemen. 2 years ago, we witnessed the launch of the VOID as the first independent private sector organization to promote corporate governance standards and best practices. Impressive results by the VOID. There's record development and awareness raising efforts. Market, most importantly, VOID has one of the important collaborators, stakeholders, and network interest to drive their companies to adopt effective corporate governance for more sustainable and actually feasible. Today, VIOD launched its first webinar to kick off the discussions among experts and directors on how corporate governance will help confront the impacts, help ensure a successful thing. In this context, the VOID has made initiatives to help navigate for the Vietnamese directors for dynamic leadership of their companies, the trust to help manage through today's challenges facing their companies, their employees, and the country of Vietnam. I would like to congratulate you on all these efforts, all these significant milestones. Background, globally, the World Bank Group is leading the efforts to support help address the COVID-19 crisis. The World Bank Group is providing $14 billion in support. IFC is providing $8 billion in support. And I'm proud to highlight that here in Vietnam, we were amongst the first to mobilize this money, both in the financial sector as well as the real sector. And we look forward to collaborating with our partners in state. Additional money to support Vietnam in these efforts. IFC and the government of Vietnam, we stand shoulder to shoulder to help this company both address the impacts and enable a fast. I'd like to introduce Ms. Kate Lazarus, our Asia Advisory Lead, currently over in Myanmar, to join us. Over to you, Kate.
Afternoon, this is Kate Lazarus from IFC's Asia ESG Advisory Program. I've been really delighted to listen to this first webinar and like to congratulate the VIOD for your success this afternoon. So in line with IFC's Asia ESG strategy and for Vietnam, we'd like to continue to contribute our support to VIOD as an important partner going forward. And following the successful collaboration that has been shared between the two parties in the past 2 years, we confirm that we will continue to support VIOD technically to help VIOD develop its strategy and operationalize its plan towards financial sustainability. This cooperation will strengthen VIOD's capacity in delivering professional development programs for directors namely the 3-day director certification program and other governance excellence programs. And we look forward to continuing to introduce to you new tools that we have been developing globally and across the region that we can continue to work with VIOD. This effort is made possible by the support and the generous collaboration with our project donors, the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO, and the government of Japan. So wishing you all the best and look forward to continuing to cooperate with you. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of our board and management of VIOD, I would like to express our gratitude to the strong and tireless commitment and support of VIOD of IFC to our VIOD during the inception and startup phase. This cooperation agreement comprehensively cover both technical and operation aspect of VIOD. The support to VIOD is not only make our VIOD to become a most reliable and professional organization in corporate governance, but also will help Vietnam company to improve the corporate governance, both standards and practical way. The signing ceremony today, in the middle of the worst pandemics in the modern world, it's not only the evidence for our sustainable collaboration, but also demonstrate how VIOD and IFC can together overcome with challenges to provide a continuous service to the market. Last but not least, I would like to thank our dedicated staff management of both organizations, VIOD and IFC, for the hard work and to make this happen. I also would like to thank our valuable partners, our facilitators, and VIOD alumni who have to make the time today to attend the first webinar and virtual witness to this remarkable moment. I look forward to the continuous support and collaboration in the future. Thank you all and wish you more healthy and happiness.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kai, and thank you, Madam Thanh, for the speech. Now I would like to invite Kai, Mr. Kai Khamuko, IFC, and Madam Hatu Thanh of VIOD to sign the cooperation agreement.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Thanh.
Thank you, Madam Thanh and Kai. Now make a toast to the success of the ceremony and our cooperation.
Cheers.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you very much for your help. Thank you. More success in the future.